And welcome back to the Behind the Dunes podcast. It's been a while, but I'm your host, Connor. Today, I'm here with a very special guest, the one, the only, Jenny Filkins. Jenny, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
It's a beautiful day. So, Jenny, why don't you tell us about who you are? Like, give yourself a little intro for viewers who might not know who you are. Obviously, you're an agent here at Dunes, but
Yes,
give us a little bit.
I am an agent here at Dunes. I was born and raised in Western Massachusetts.
Oh, we're going to get there. Hold on. Don't
sorry.
give it all up at once. Just
Yeah.
a little quick career bio.
A little career
Snapshot.
bio. So I have been in Hilton Head real estate since 2020. I started my career as a personal assistant to a high volume team, and then briefly took a little hiatus, took a break, and moved to California for about 6 months, had a blast out there. And then I came back and began working with Jeff Hunt, which really propelled my career. And then just recently, I've gone out as a solo agent, still with Dunes, and just absolutely loving it.
It's awesome. So let's start back. Where are you from?
I'm from Western Massachusetts.
Okay. How long did you live, like, majority of your life there?
Yeah, so I lived there until I was about 24.
Okay.
And then when I was 24, I Googled nice places to live that are warm. I had never even heard of Hilton Head.
Mm-hmm.
I had never been to South Carolina, but that's what came up on my Google search. So I moved to Beaufort, South Carolina. It was more affordable to me at that time. And then, so that was in 2016. So I've been here almost 10 years.
Okay.
And then I've been on Hilton Head since 2019.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was life like in Massachusetts?
Cold. It was really cold, and it just felt like a grind. You know, the life everybody wanted existed somewhere else. You know,
Right.
like nobody enjoyed their day to day. I felt like, you know, it was trying to work really hard to maybe carve out a week or two a year where you could really go somewhere and enjoy your life. And then, you know, one day my mom just kind of told me, she said, you know, Jenny, you can go live where it's warm and you can live there year round. You know, anything's possible, and wherever you want to live is an option. So just because you live here right now doesn't mean you have to live here forever.
What were some activities that you enjoyed?
When I lived in Mass, I liked ice skating, like figure skating was
Really?
a bigger part. Yeah, and it's a really big thing down there. You know, like at one school I went to, it was right next to the rink. So for gym class, you know, we would go do ice skating and
During gym? I'm so jealous.
yeah. And ice hockey is a bigger sport, I feel like, where I'm from than football. You know, like what your football is here is what our hockey was back home. You know, you'd play it from a very young age. Your high school teams were very big.
I'm from the north, too.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
those here. Yeah, I forgot you're from up north, too.
I much prefer hockey over football anyway. Don't come for me.
Exactly. And, like, I didn't even really, like, college football is not a thing at all
No.
where I'm from. You know, it's like you talk about football, you have the Patriots.
Yep.
What else do you need to know? You know, and then people, when I moved here, they're like, what's your favorite college team? I'm like, I don't know, Amherst?
Some people make that like their whole personality.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Clemson. Anyway, that's a different topic for a different day.
Yeah.
So you got to do ice skating during gym class.
Yeah, and I mean, I wasn't like a professional skater or anything, but
No,
like
but
it was our thing to do on the weekends. And then in the
that's so cool,
winter,
though.
you know, you'd go to the outdoor rink. When I was growing up, I grew up on a flower farm, and so we had a lot of land, and behind our house was a lake that would freeze, and my dad would take us out on the snowmobile and, you know, strap a sled to the back and just whip us around the lake. And
That's honestly one of the best things, just skating on a frozen pond or lake. Like, there are very few feelings out there that match that,
yeah,
in my opinion.
those are some of the things I do miss about back home, is just like the real mountainy, woodsy feeling of the Northeast. And just, you know, I feel like the people are a little bit different there. You know, they're very funny and quick-witted, but everything's harder. Everything your day-to-day life here is a lot easier than
sure.
day-to-day life there. There's never really going to be a time that you're waiting for the bus in -5-degree weather here.
That is very true. So after high school, what path did you choose to take?
So I studied psychology at MCLA, which is the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts.
Okay.
Didn't love it. And then I actually started, I got into timeshare sales, which is interesting. Yeah.
How did you get into that?
Somebody worked there and said that they thought I'd be a good fit, and they recommended that I go for an interview, and I did, and I loved it. And it was so fun, and I really enjoyed, it was the first time in my life where I felt like my eyes were open to like a different set of possibilities. We'd have like a very motivating meeting every morning. They'd really pump you up, and it's where I really got into listening to motivational speakers and different motivating podcasts that really just instill in you that it doesn't matter any of your past circumstances. It just matters how hard you try and your willingness to be open and be open-minded and just see the end goal and not really see anything in between. It was an experience in my life that I think was short-lived. I only did it for maybe a year or two, but it propelled me into this greater state of thinking that, my current situation is not my forever situation.
Did you have any prior sales experience before that? Was that your first foray into sales?
I would say I worked at a gym at one point, just kind of when I was young, and we got $1 for every person we signed up. So I guess you could consider that. But that was my first real sales job, I would say, for sure.
Do you have any interesting stories from that you'd like to share? Just off the top of your head. Anything fun, interesting?
Gosh, no. I don't think, nothing that's coming to the top of my head. It was just such a great experience in my life. And I have friends that I'm still friends with now. And, that was over 10 years ago. And just some of the best people I've met. And it's interesting, too, to see the path that a lot of them, and actually a handful of them, have moved down here to Hilton Head.
Really?
I would say probably 7 of my colleagues from timeshare in Massachusetts are now selling timeshare here on Hilton Head.
No way, that's wild.
Yeah.
This place is so small.
I know.
So big at the same time.
Exactly. And it's a good place for timeshare. I can see how it makes sense for some people here, for sure.
For sure. So after timeshares, what was next in your path?
Pretty shortly after that is when I made the decision to move down south, just to make some quick money. In addition to timeshare, I was bartending and waitressing.
Yeah. Food and bev is very, very big down here anyway. It's very
profitable. I was doing it there in New England just to save up enough money to get myself here because I didn't know anybody.
Gotcha.
And I only came down with what fit in my car. I was lucky to be able to rent when I moved something that was fully furnished and then kind of get my feet under me from there.
And then you said you moved to Beaufort?
Yeah, I moved to Beaufort, specifically to Ladies Island, which I had never heard of. Mm-hmm. And when I read it in Massachusetts, it said Ladies Island, and I said, wow, that sounds amazing. Like, I'm a lady, and it's a whole island, like, it has to be incredible. And it was.
When you got there, did you realize it wasn't just all ladies?
I knew it wasn't going to be all ladies, but I just knew it was going to be special and something. I just feel like Beaufort County. So Beaufort County is made up of 65 different little islands.
Ooh.
And that's something I find to be very, very cool. Just all the different island hopping and things that you can do here in the Lowcountry and be so close yet so far away. If you take a boat from Hilton Head to Beaufort, it might be 20 minutes, but if you're going to drive from Hilton Head to Beaufort, it's going to be over an hour. So it's just really cool how you can kind of hop around, and if you have like a boat or a jet ski, the island or the county is so much more accessible.
Right. Since we're talking about boats, I guess we'll segue into one of the questions I normally do later in the podcast, but it's only fitting. Are you beach or boat?
So we have a couple little jet skis, which I love. and it's nice to be able to just zip around and go to different areas. The beach is nice too, but both I can only do for about 2 hours before
totally
I'm just
fair.
kind of
Over
I'm
it?
not good at just sitting around. Like when I'm on the beach, I have to be looking for shells or shark teeth, and going in the water and then taking a walk. Like I'm not one of those people that can just lay on the beach all day. I might be more of a pool person for that.
That's fair. All totally viable. So after you moved down here to Ladies Island, what was next for you?
After I lived in Ladies Island, the next place I lived the next year was a really quaint little place called Habersham, another part of Beaufort, kind of in the Burton area. And I was a manager of an Italian restaurant there as I studied for my real estate exam.
Okay.
I did that at TCL in Beaufort.
Yep.
And I had a really, really cute little cottage in Habersham. Then, from there, I took a little hiatus taking my real estate exam. There was a little bit of time in between. I had some family things going on back home.
Yep.
And then I took my real estate exam in the end of 2019 to start in real estate in 2020. And at that point is when I moved to Hilton Head because I knew that's where I eventually wanted to be, and I wanted my career to be was in Hilton Head.
Right.
I really enjoy working on the rental side of things and oceanfront. And while Beaufort is a beautiful area surrounded by water, there's not as much true beach there. There's only really the hunting island, which is the state park where there's no homes, and then you have to go further out to places like Fripp Island,
Right.
Harbor Island. So I feel like Hilton Head had more opportunity for the clientele I was hoping to help.
So what made you want to get into real estate? Like, what was that deciding factor around that 2019 time that you're like, I'm going to go do this?
Yeah, I think I always wanted to kind of get into real estate, especially once I worked in timeshare.
Right.
In timeshare, I felt like I loved what I was doing. I learned that I really loved everything about sales and helping people kind of be able to do something that they had to do anyways. Like in a lot of instances, like people need to have somewhere to live.
For sure.
And so if this is something that people have to do anyways, I want to try to make it the most pleasant and just the best experience for them emotionally, financially, sensibly. And when I was in timeshare, I realized that's where my love of sales kind of flourished. But I realized in timeshare that the product I was selling wasn't maybe the product I wanted to be selling. So I knew I wanted to be helping people and even helping people achieve their dream vacations. But I felt like there was something bigger than timeshare because I was worried that the timeshare product I was selling maybe wasn't actually working for the people in the way that I thought it was going to at the time that I sold it to them.
Right. Okay. So how was that process of going through the exam, and then how did you pick where you wanted to end up going to work?
Yeah, so the exam was hard for me. There was a lot of time between the time that I took my real estate classes, which I did in person.
Yep.
And then, unfortunately, my mom had some health issues back home that I went back and forth between for a long time. So it was probably maybe even almost a year between taking the classes and taking the exam. So the exam was very, very difficult for me. But I passed. And from there, because I was so new to Hilton Head specifically, I didn't really have a direction that I thought I needed to go. I wasn't like, I need to go to this place or that place. I went to some brokerages and they said, oh, no, we don't take new agents. And so I interviewed with a few different brokerages, and the one I ended up with was Weichert, great brokerage and great for a new agent. Mm-hmm. They did a lot of great training, but it was hard. Real estate is, they say bad salespeople have skinny kids, because you have to, it's not paid like a traditional job, it's all commission. So It was definitely difficult for me at first being a newbie. You know, sometimes people in the industry aren't so kind to people who are new. And I just lacked experience in this specific thing. So an opportunity came up where I could become the personal assistant to a group of people, a team that was very successful. And it was an opportunity I took, and it was life-changing for me because I gained significant contract experience. I learned about all the areas on Hilton Head. I learned about, you know, the way the successful people ran their business was now all I knew.
Right.
It was the beginning of my career, and it was a blessing. You know, at first I thought, you know, like, am I taking a step back by taking this assistant role? At no point did I get my real estate license hoping to become an assistant.
Right.
As I'm sure any licensed assistant, that's not the path that they see themselves taking when they're signing up for the real estate.
For sure.
But, you know, it's one of those things that, like, oh my gosh, thank God I didn't represent anybody when I first got my license, because after a year, I quickly learned that there's just so much that goes into protecting your client during either the purchase or a sale. And now that I had been in the assistant role for 5 years, and I have a very unique blend of transaction and marketing experience, and all I know is how the top agents do it. I've never had an opportunity to really learn anything other. I just feel so blessed because I feel like the unique experience I have has given me confidence in an area before where maybe I was looking to find a way to introduce myself to some of these top players and, you know, the people, the attorneys and the contractors and just kind of everybody who kept the machine going that is Hilton Head Real Estate. I went from hoping I would be introduced to having somebody at the top take their time to introduce me. So it really was quite a blessing.
So how long were you with that top team as an agent?
So I was with them as a licensed assistant for maybe a little over 2 years.
Okay.
Then I briefly moved to California. Mm-hmm. Didn't really care for it. Moved back, and that's where I got introduced to Jeff Hunt.
Okay.
And I worked with Jeff Hunt for a little over 2 years again, and that was another incredible experience for me. Jeff is such a talented realtor, and he taught me a different side of it. So both teams operate a little bit different, mm-hmm. especially like even just the first team I was with was a team of only women. And then Jeff is a man. And so just kind of seeing the way they operate their businesses differently. And it was great because two totally different methods of operating their businesses, both incredibly successful. So it's nice to have kind of that blended experience where I can take things that resonate with me from both sides and put them now into practice to my own business. And I have the support of everybody at Dunes. I also have, you know, my old team that I can call up and just kind of pick their brains when I have questions. And it's just been a great experience. And my time with Jeff Hunt has been invaluable.
Let's talk about that time a little bit.
Yeah.
How was it working with Jeff? Like, delve into it a little bit deeper. And for those who don't know Jeff, go back and check out episode 1 of Behind the Dunes podcast when John Floyd and I interviewed Jeff Hunt, if you'd like to get to know Jeff a little bit more. But,
yeah, so Jeff does a lot of real estate on Hilton Head, but specifically in Palmetto Dunes, I would say like is his niche market. Mm-hmm. And specifically, again, with properties that are on the rental market. So he really has taught me a lot about understanding, you know, like the objective of getting your clients to hopefully be at a cash flow neutral position within their purchases and how to take their what they're putting in and how to really maximize, you know, and distinguish between different properties, you know, what they're currently doing, what their potential is, and what are the realistic expectations for these people who are looking to purchase something to make it income producing and make it make sense, rather than people who are looking for something to live in full time. I feel like I really developed a love for working with buyers with Jeff. I know a lot of real estate agents really focus on listings and sellers. And of course that's important, and those are great clients to have, but I really feel like if you can be somebody that adds value when somebody's looking for one of these purchases to, because then you're like buying a business. Mm-hmm. And it's just a whole different mindset. And sometimes, like it makes sense for people to leverage taking out a mortgage rather than when they thought maybe it made more sense for them to pay cash, and just kind of opening up those areas and seeing different ways to achieve their goals financially and with their property. And just my time with Jeff for buyers has been the greatest experience of my life.
So do you have any advice for somebody looking to get their real estate license, a newer realtor that thinks maybe I'm struggling,
Definitely. So I really, really, really can't emphasize how valuable my time was working with successful realtors. I really would encourage anybody who might be thinking about it, if you can put yourself in a team full of successful people and you have a realtor there that you can kind of lean into and talk strategy through, because everything in real estate is learned. None of it, besides kind of maybe some of the navigating emotional things with people, but everything is learned as far as, contract process, the specific forms you have to use. It's all learned skills, so you're not going to be born knowing any of it. And what you learn on your real estate exam really isn't specific to Hilton Head Bluffton real estate. You're learning just facts.
You're telling me how to convert like square acres into a hectare and all of that doesn't really apply.
Does not really apply to the meat and potatoes of what we do day to day.
Darn.
Once in a while you use something like that from your exam, you'll have to like exactly how many square feet is an acre, and then you'll remember, but it's pretty rare. So you really want to have somebody that you can trust and lean into, because just going at it alone, unfortunately we have people in our industry, in our area, that are bullies, and they don't take kindly to new people, and which is really such a shame, because every great agent was once a new agent.
So true.
And I really think there's a great value in working under somebody and kind of maybe even like sucking up your ego and just doing it for a year or two and processing a lot of contracts and putting yourself in situations in real estate where, it's not all on you, and you can really observe the way things are done before you're taking out clients on your own, and you've just got all of this experience in your tool belt, and you can say, you can truly say, I remember when this happened before and we did X, Y, Z and it worked great. Or, hey, I remember we did this before and we tried this and it didn't work so well, so let's pivot and move this direction. Or when this happened before, this was the contractor that we called. There's just so much value in working under or with somebody with great experience, rather than just trying to go out there and figure it out and hope that everybody is going to be as kind. And don't get me wrong, there are so many kind and great agents at all the brokerages. I just actually missed a call from an agent at a different brokerage that I had a question about a community, and I know that person knows that community well, and I'm just gonna lean into them and ask a couple of questions to get some clarity. And so there are a lot of really nice agents, but it's very intimidating when you're new.
I feel like, now this is just my opinion, and my opinion does not reflect that of Dunes Real Estate, but I feel like it should almost be like required for you to work under somebody when you first get your license, just because like some of the stuff that I've seen like for the real estate exam, it doesn't necessarily teach you how to be a real estate agent, like it doesn't really teach you like how to negotiate or like the ins and outs of certain communities, but you can get that experience like you did working under a high level agent. And I've seen you work, I work with you a lot, and I think you're tremendous at what you do. And I think the experience that you gained from working with that other team and then with Jeff is going to set you up with so much success, and we've already kind of seen some of that success since you became a solo agent in that short period of time that you've done it. Like, I think it's really going to set you up to be a very, 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 very successful real estate agent.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And I do agree. I feel like I'm able to now speak and navigate different situations with a set of confidence, because going on a listing appointment, like, sure, it might be like my first listing appointment as a solo agent, but I've sat through 200 listing appointments where we've answered questions and overcame obstacles. And I do feel more confident more than ever. And even though I'm, you could say I'm a brand new solo agent, I feel like I've got the confidence of an agent that has listed 400 listings, because that's the paperwork I've processed and the listing appointments I've sat on and just so much. And I do agree, I had an agent tell me once, he was a newer agent, and he made a comment when there was like an addendum or something he was supposed to write, because typically like whoever requests the change writes the addendum or whatever. And he said, but I remembered that the previous addendum he had written had some mistakes on it. So I said, hey, why don't you send it to me to review before we send it off for signatures? That way, if there's a mistake, we don't have to get it signed twice. We'll just double check it. And he said, well, why don't you just write the addendum? I don't really care who does the paperwork side of real estate. That's just kind of like the mundane stuff. And I'm thinking, the paperwork is the most important part of real estate. I will happily write that addendum. And that would be an example of somebody that I think would benefit to greater experience, because maybe that would have been something I thought in the beginning. I thought maybe I would have thought real estate is what you see on TV. It's a lot of showing houses, which it is, but the real work starts for the representation of your client once you're under contract. That's where everything, I believe, is most important, and that's like the true representation that you provide along with the attorney. But really, it's so important that your agent make sure, if they're using words like and or, those words sometimes get mixed up, but they're very different, and they have very different outcomes.
It's very true. No, I feel like, not saying being a real estate agent is easy, but I feel like it's easier to get somebody under contract, but getting it to close is where the real meat and potatoes lies.
I agree. Yeah, definitely. That's really where you show your value. Yeah. You can be, lots of people obtain their real estate licenses, but to be a valuable realtor and, somebody that can truly advise and make you as a client feel confident that, okay, I feel good that this person is, because this is most time the biggest purchase anybody makes in their entire life.
Oh, for sure.
And the real estate exam itself is only 2 or 3 weeks long.
Yeah.
Or the classes. So the real value is definitely once you're under contract and getting them across the finish line. And it's bigger than just, talking to the lender or the attorney. It's the things that you learn over time, like this neighborhood is a hot spot for polybutylene plumbing, and which is a big issue in our area. And, that might not be something you would know right away. And so I believe every new agent has the potential to be a great agent, but learning as much as you can about our area specifically, and just like sitting down, going over the paperwork and the contracts and specific verbiage to use. And that's what I really love about Dunes too, is I feel like Daniel is such a backbone to Dunes, having a broker that is not outselling real estate. They are just here to support you. There's just something so great about knowing that if I walk downstairs, I know Daniel's going to be in the office and he's going to be able to answer my question, and I can trust what he's saying as the broker in charge. He's on all these committees, and he takes such pride in his position with the South Carolina real estate industry. And I love Dunes. It's my favorite brokerage I've worked at so far. And I think having somebody, and Daniel and Kelly, and just Dunes has great support, I will say, and they're always always available. And if they're not available, you're not going to wait 12 hours to hear back from your broker in charge, which is what I've heard from some people at other brokerages and even in different states. That's just their brokerage might work out of Charleston or something like that. But, having a non-competing broker that's sole purpose is here to support you as an agent and make sure that, you're not accidentally like ethically doing anything wrong, or, you're using the correct forms. It's an incredible experience.
So let's talk about that for a second, because you said Daniel, non-competing broker in charge. A lot of people don't know what a non-competing broker in charge is, right? Like they just see a brokerage, like, your national brands, and there's a broker, and like, what is that, right? But then you've got Daniel, who is a non-competing broker in charge, which is pretty cool, because I don't know that many places that have that type of model. So just from working at other brokerages, because you have, how has having a non-competing broker in charge impacted you, or how do you think it could affect not only just newer agents, but agents in general in their careers?
Yeah, so every other brokerage I've ever worked at had broker in charges who were outselling real estate. Yep. So I might say like, oh, hey, I'm getting ready to go to a listing appointment at XYZ. And then the broker would say, hey, I'm getting ready to go see if I can list that too. And so who's a client more likely to go with? Probably the broker in charge. So they're going to be not only a successful realtor, their time is going to be taken away for that. They're going to be out doing the real estate duties. So you might call your broker in charge at one of those companies, and it might be hours before they are able to get back to you. And they're going to have a list of people that they need to get back to you, and you might be eighth on the list. On the flip, or like here at Dunes, if I tell my broker, hey, I'm getting ready to go on a listing appointment at XYZ, he's going to say, awesome, how can I support you? Do you have all your materials? Do you have any questions that I could help with before you go? Remember, while you're there, if you need anything, just pick up the phone and call me. I'll be available. It's an incredible support, and it makes you feel better. Also, I feel like as an agent that this company that you're working for is truly there to support you rather than compete with you.
That's true. I actually was at a property with an agent yesterday, and Daniel went with that agent and basically helped him get it across the finish line to list the property. And
yes,
I thought that was pretty cool.
I agree. I've been with Jeff. I've been on a listing appointment that Daniel accompanied with. They're just kind of mutual friends, and Daniel adds a lot of value. And anytime Daniel wants to go on a listing appointment with me, I am happy to have him come along.
So that kind of also brings into another question that I forgot to ask you earlier. Silly me. When you decided to transition to being a solo agent and no longer working with Jeff in that capacity, what made you decide to stay at Dunes versus testing the waters in a different brokerage?
There really wasn't a question for me. I never even really thought about interviewing with other brokerages. Leaving Jeff was obviously a very hard decision for me emotionally, because Jeff and I are very close. I think of him as one of my best friends. He's somebody I really admire in the business world. So, and he treated me fantastic as an employee. He always talked about us as more of a partnership, and things like time off were never an issue. Just, he was a great person to work for. So sometimes, it's like you have the bird in hand. So to make the jump to be a realtor was very, very difficult for me, and it's also risky because there was a good chance that I could do it and I would be unsuccessful. Mm-hmm. And he obviously has to hire somebody else, so that position would no longer be there, and then I would just kind of be in this space existing, So I think I probably brought it up to Daniel, and he was super supportive of any way that I wanted to go. And he reminded me that my position at Dunes would be there for me, even if I was no longer part of Jeff's team, I would still be a valued part of Dunes real estate, which was important to me. And there really was just no question in my mind. I have worked for a couple other brokerages in the area, and just the way they do things, while great in a lot of ways, didn't even compete with the value I saw at Dunes. And I mean value in general between yourself with the photos and Kelly and Jessica and Nancy and just the team at Dunes and Linda. And it's just, having such a supportive team, and it's not too big like some other companies with hundreds and hundreds of agents and huge support staff. Well, they might be good. They're all great for their own reasons, but I've worked for other companies and there was no reason or like even thought in my mind to leave Dunes unless, of course I thought, well, what if they don't want me as an agent for some reason, which at that point I started to think, well, I'll have to pivot, but that didn't even become a conversation because they were so supportive to me transitioning.
I know the real reason that you wanted to stay here. It was just to be on this podcast.
That's right.
Yeah. You were like, I got to be a solo agent so I could get on Behind the Dunes.
Exactly.
The number one real estate podcast in South Carolina. That might be another shot, but here we are. So what's next for Jenny Filkins?
Wow. So I'm just so incredibly grateful. I've had some success so far going out on my own, and I just I want to keep it up. I just want to keep hitting the pavement, and I've recently moved to Bluffton, so I'm excited to just kind of learn that in a different capacity. I've always known Bluffton, but now I'm kind of learning it as a local and seeing, like what the best spots are. I'm very excited. I've got a couple great listings, and I'm just excited for life right now. I feel really good about my career. I feel really good about the people I'm surrounded with, and it just feels really good. And I know that it's probably a high right now, and in real estate, the highs are highs and the lows are low, and so prepared to kind of prepare myself and navigate through the times because I know it's not always going to be fun or easy, and there will be times that I want to quit, I'm sure. So just want to really make sure that I can just kind of stay steady and continue to do things to remind myself that I'm in the right position and I feel like I'm in the right place. It's a good day today because I feel really great about everything in my career. I'm very excited and hoping to just give all my clients the best experience possible and the best representation.
It also helps to feel good when you have 70-degree weather in February.
I know. And it's like the nicest day of the year today. It's super nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a great day. And I have a very busy day planned, and I'm feeling good.
Good. So now we're gonna talk about some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Feel free to give as little or as much detail as you would like.
Got it.
Expound upon your choices, if you will, if you want.
Okay.
So now that you moved to Bluffton, what is your favorite restaurant that you've been to so far in Bluffton? Or that you've been to in the past?
Chow Daddy's.
Okay.
I love their burgers. The one with the arugula.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, your favorite place on the island?
Okay, so I have 3 favorite places on the island. One of them, Tin and Tallow, which just recently took over the Jarvis Creek General Store. Delicio, which is an incredible vegetarian restaurant.
Okay.
And then on the complete other side of that coin, I love Bodie's Steakhouse, which is high-end, really great quality steakhouse.
Do you play tennis or golf?
No.
Okay, so then my normal question of tennis or golf does not apply. We've already went to beach or boat. Let's see. If you had to plan your perfect day, either in Bluffton or on the island, what does it look like?
Okay, so my perfect day on the island, I think I would get up early and I would go to Jen's sweat fitness class at Shelter Cove.
Okay.
Which if you haven't been there, it's a really great outdoor, mostly body weight exercises right on the water in Shelter Cove. You can drop in. It's awesome. After that, I would go over to Shelter Cove and go to the French Bakery or another really great breakfast spot in there. Then I would have brought my bike for all of this. So then after that, I'd bike to the beach and go kind of like to the Bradley Beach area, maybe go to Pool Bar Gyms, bike the beach down to Coligny, maybe stop into Sea Pines to see my best friend on my bike. Then I would maybe go to the bank, depending what time it is, just kind of check it out. They usually have some good live music, and then come back and sit by the fire, maybe at Tin and Tallow, and have a drink and have a burger, and then go home early and get to bed early. That's my perfect day. On the island, I think my perfect day in Bluffton would be to drop the jet skis in the water. We like to drop them in at Hardyville. And take a really long trip all the way to Defusky and come back. It's a long trip, and it's really fun, though. You can stop at different sandbars. And I think that's one of my favorite things to do in Bluffton is kind of drop them in really far out in Hardyville and then go all the way to Defusky.
Do you and Lee have a GoPro?
I would bet he does, but
I feel like that's something you should put a GoPro on the front of the jet ski and like film part of that.
You're right. Sometimes we take out the drone and one of us will drive and the other will man the drone. But yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if we have a GoPro.
Oh, you're flying drones now. Would you like to fly drones for me?
No. Thank you for asking, though. I'm not very good at it, and it's very intimidating.
Well, when we head onto the island in a little bit, you can fly it because
Thanks.
I think that would be fun. Let's see. What's the last book you read?
So every year I like to read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Okay.
My dad introduced me to that book, I think, when I was in high school, and it's a good, easy read. The principles really resonate with me. So I try to read that book at least once a year. I like Nicholas Sparks books for like my for fun at the beach reading. But I think the most recent one was probably when I reread How to Win Friends and Influence People. And if you have not read that one, you or anybody listening to this podcast, I highly recommend it. It's a very good book.
All right. And then what was the last podcast besides Behind the Dunes podcast that you listened to?
This morning I listened to, what is this one called? So it's called Coaching for Leaders by David Stokowick. And the episode is Becoming an AI Savvy Leader with David D. Kramer.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I see myself as a realtor at Dunes Real Estate. In my career, I just want to kind of continue down the path that I'm on. I feel really great about it. I'd love to just be a realtor that has a great reputation of the representation I provide, and then also somebody that realtors can lean into, specifically new realtors that are looking for somebody to be kind to them as they start their journeys, and somebody that can answer questions and just kind of be a tool, because the better everybody else is the better we are. And I hope that everybody can have a beautiful, great career, because just the better everybody is the better we are as a whole. And it's fair to assume that most of the people getting into real estate have good intentions to be career-long realtors. So the quicker we can make everybody better, the better it is for everybody, you know?
For sure.
So.
Well, we have to cut this episode a little bit shorter than normal because we have to go take photos of your new listing.
Yes, very exciting.
So thank you for listening to Behind the Dunes. I'm your host, Connor, and this is Jenny Filkins. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
We'll catch you next time.